Well, hello YouTube, it's me Fortmaster, and welcome back to another JaruJaruJ reaction. And this one's kind of special, because this is the first new video that they've uploaded in... Oh god, it's been a while, let me double check. Yeah, so the last video they uploaded was talking about the holiday newsletter 3 months ago. And unlike that one, this is an actual theory. So this is dark matter theory. And, well, I mean, given that, you know, the Dark Worlds are a thing in the game, I guess that's certainly a name, but that doesn't really tell me very much about, like, really anything. Though, I mean, I am curious, so I'm still gonna check this out. I mean, the thumbnail has, like, hopes, dreams, light, death, and then kingdom, and then magic, emotion, dark, life. So... I guess I could potentially see, because, like, in the light world or, you know, the normal world, you know, people die. We've already seen that a couple of times, and, you know, there's the whole theory that Rousey is, in fact, you know, made of the remains of Azrael, who is somehow dead. I still don't get how that works, even though, you know, everybody thinks he's at college. But, you know, thinking about it, in the Dark World, apart from the weird route in Chapter 2, we haven't actually seen anybody die. Because, like, if you just attack them in normal battles, the enemies just run away and you can't make friends with them anymore. It's only in the weird route that you actually, you know, kill the enemies by freezing them solid, and, you know, then you also kill Birdly. So, there's definitely something going on with this. And I definitely want to see what it is. So, yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because I know how this works. The vast majority of people who watch my content aren't actually subscribed to me, and I'd very much like that to change, because my next big goal for this year is to, you know, hopefully hit 5,000 subscribers. And I mean, if Social Blade says it's possible, then, you know, I'm gonna try to believe them. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
It has been far too long since I gave you wonderful people a truly massive theory. So today, I'm going to do just that. In this video, I will be sharing a theory that seeks to tie together darkness, magic, souls, determination, hopes and dreams, life and death, and Chris's blue skin. All these concepts and more will be explored in what I am now dubbing dark matter theory.
Chris's blue skin. Oh, okay. I mean... Actually thinking about it, yeah, it is kind of weird. Because, I mean, obviously, all of the Lighteners change colors. Like, their palette swaps when they hit the Dark World. But, like, Chris is the most different. Because, you know, Susie goes from, like, purple to pink. Noelle goes from a dark brown to a light brown with her fur. Thinking about it, I can't remember specifically, like, how Birdly changes. But yeah, Chris changes from yellow skin to blue skin. Okay, yeah, so there's probably some symbolism there. I mean, you never know. That might actually feed into my whole theory about Chris not actually being a true human. About him, you know, about them potentially being, you know, like an escaped, like, goner body or something like that. Who knows?
Hello, my name is Jaru. My journey towards the dark matter theory started with a simple question. How does the dark world work? To answer that question, I collected everything we know about the dark world and broke it down into categories. The first category I would like to discuss is darkness. Dark fountains, of course, produce darkness, but this darkness isn't just the absence of light. It is magical darkness that seems to actively consume light.
Yeah, I mean, you know, going back to the whole Gaster quote, photon readings negative, which, I mean, actually thinking about it, that's actually a pretty scary concept. And also, okay, thinking about it, like, and I know this has nothing to do with the theory, but, like, how do you think having, like, negative photons would actually work with our eyes, given that, you know, our eyes work by photons coming in and hitting, you know, the various cones and, oh god, what's the other thing in the eye that catches light called? Rods, that's it. So if you literally had less than none, do you think your eyes would start going really weird from that? Or do you think it would just be, oh, it's dark, I still can't see anything?
We see this when we open the doors to both the Castle Town and Cyberworld. The rooms outside the Dark World immediately darken, as if the darkness was actively creeping forward and altering our reality. And yet, despite completely nullifying all light on contact, we can see just fine when within the Dark Worlds. This is potentially explained by the spotlights in Queen's Mansion, which are described as dark bulbs that emit bright shadows. In addition, Lancer and Susie mention getting a reverse tan by basking in the shadows. Very strange, to be sure, but a scientific explanation may be provided by none other than Gaster, who has an experiment in Undertale that he describes as follows. The darkness keeps growing, the shadows cutting deeper, photon readings negative. Darkness that grows sounds a lot like what we see in Deltarune, and photon readings negative might explain the physics of this.
You know, again, going back to the whole, like, growing paler and, like, as a reverse suntan, I'm almost thinking, do you think there'd actually be, like, health benefits from that? Like, do you think bathing in darkness lessens your chance of getting skin cancer? Again, neither here nor there. I just thinking about that's a funny thought.
You see, you could interpret this line as saying that he failed to find any photons, but you could also read it as him detecting negative photons, aka anti-photons. Perhaps anti-photons work the same way in the dark world that normal light works in the regular world. I love the idea of there being some underlying physics that could explain all this, and I really wanted that to be the direction that I took this theory. Sadly, it just didn't quite work.
I mean, you call them anti-photons, but that very much sounds like it's not, you know, a different kind of matter. It's antimatter, which, I mean, you don't have to know that much about science to know that when matter touches antimatter, you know, they kind of annihilate. So God, I hope the Dark Worlds aren't actually made of antimatter.
While it would be nice to try and couch the Dark World in scientific terminology as Gaster does, the reality is that this isn't really a science fiction story.
Not in the slightest.
Deltarune is much more of a fantasy, and therefore it requires us to look at it through a lens of magic and mysticism in order to properly understand it. This is especially true given the supernatural properties of dark worlds. This brings us to the second major attribute of darkness: transformation. Anything that comes...
Oh my God. I feel so stupid right now. I'm sorry I'm pausing a lot in the beginning of this, but I literally just got why this whole boss battle happens. So, like, I literally only just realized that the reason it transforms and gets bigger is, you know, because it's a checker, and when it reached the end of the board, it was kinged. How many years ago did Chapter 1 come out? And I literally only just got that. It even has the crown! God, I am stupid sometimes.
Comes into contact with a dark world is transformed to some extent. Notably, the way things are transformed varies wildly. Lightners have their outfits undergo drastic alterations, but there's little obvious pattern to this. Chris and Birdley are given armor, Susie got a sort of biker
Okay, yeah, so Birdley just... Yeah, it's funny, because, like, so, I mean, Susie kind of, again, went from purple to pink. Noelle just kind of became a slightly cooler brown. Birdley kind of went, yeah, again, kind of went slightly into a brighter shade of blue as to his more, like, subdued, slightly more subdued, like, lightener color palette. And then, again, you have Chris here, who just goes from yellow to straight blue. I mean...
aesthetic, while Noelle became a white mage. And as far as objects go, some are altered radically, like pencils turning into swords, but some are seemingly not changed at all, such as Noelle's watch. In fact, most armor in Deltarune consists of pretty mundane items that don't seem to be magically altered, at least not to the extent of other objects. By contrast, the rooms Dark Worlds spawn in are transformed radically. A classroom and a computer lab are expanded into massive cities and kingdoms. And again, there's little rhyme or reason to this. The floor in the classroom becomes a forest, while the floor in the computer lab becomes an urban city. The cabinets, which may represent the final areas, turn into a castle in one instance and a mansion in the other. There's no consistency in quantity, as there's only one of these posters in the light world, while there are dozens of Ferris wheels in the dark world, and there's no consistency in size or shape, as a laptop became a single darkener, while a similarly sized checkerboard became an entire region. Even the bodies of Lighteners aren't consistent. As Susie and Berdly became more vibrant, Noelle became more pale, and Chris swapped color palettes altogether. And that's not even bringing up the mess that is Darkners. Why is a pencil turned into a sword, while a playing card is turned into a full person? Why do some computer programs become mindless animals, while others become intelligent beings? Why does a checkerboard become a region, while a puzzle piece becomes a tutor? If there's a pattern to all this transformation, then it has to rely on a mechanic capable of generating an enormous variety of outcomes.
That's it. The dark worlds and darkness are AI generated. Of course.
This, in turn, brings me to the third attribute of darkness, and the attribute that this theory is named after: dark matter. We know that darkness transforms objects into darkeners, but what is less often discussed is what these darkeners are actually made of. A darkener who enters the light world reverts back into a mundane object, meaning that whatever substance makes up their dark world forms only exists in the dark world. And since this substance only exists in the land of darkness, I've chosen to dub it as dark matter. This is not specifically in reference to real-life dark matter, but if you want to view them as being the same substance, feel free.
Actually, thinking about it, that name, Jaru, I think you might be onto something there. At least in response to like real world dark matter, because like, think about it for a second. What's the main thing that, distinguishes dark matter from regular matter in our universe? It's the fact that we know it's there because we can sense its gravity, but we can't see it. Now, what do we have here? We have matter that, when in a dark world, is fully present and can make worlds, people, everything. But the second you take it out of the dark world and bring it back into the light world, it seems to cease to exist. I don't know if that was intentional at Jaru, but that is actually really brilliant.
As for Deltarune dark matter, the question naturally arises. What is this substance? Where does it come from? And why does it behave the way it does? A vital clue for solving this puzzle, in my opinion, is the way objects and people in the dark world seem physically malleable. For example, Chris's sword can become a shield, Susie's axe can vanish entirely, and Lancer can dismiss his body and revert into a playing card. This implies to me that dark matter has a magical component to it that allows it to switch between matter and energy. If that sounds familiar, it should. This is extremely similar to how magic functions in Undertale. In that game, monsters had a pool of magic that remained in an energy state until it was called upon, at which point it would manifest as physical phenomena. This phenomena could be temporary, such as a fireball or spear, or it could be permanent, such as with the bodies of monsters. This similarity between Darkners and Undertale monsters may extend even further. Perhaps the objects Darkners are formed from effectively act as their souls. If a monster has a magical body surrounding their soul, then maybe a Darkner has a magical body surrounding their object.
Geez, okay, that might very well be why Rules Card is so messed up, because, he's the one playing card in a deck of cards that nobody ever pays any attention to.
That would explain why Lancer transforms into a playing card, but never transforms into anything else. He's not necessarily shape-shifting, he's just banishing his body and leaving only his soul, aka his object, behind.
Also, are you also unintentionally suggesting that the Darkners and Deltarune are basically identical to the gems from Steven Universe? Because, I mean, granted, it's been a long time since I watched Steven Universe, but the one thing I remember about their biology was the fact that the only physical thing of their bodies was their gem, and then the rest of their body was actually made out of light. Oh god, that's just it! Darkners are anti-gems!
Undertale monsters don't usually do that, of course, as it would kill them to banish their bodies, but that may be because monsters draw power from their souls, while Darkners draw power from an external source in the form of dark fountains. Perhaps that allows them to be without a body in a way that monsters never could. Although there is at least one instance of a monster banishing and resummoning her physical form. I am of course talking about Undyne. When she becomes Undyne, she completely reshapes her body, proving that Undertale magic has similar malleable properties to dark matter, even when it's put in the form of somebody's body. Another element that connects Undertale magic and dark matter is, funny enough, food. You see, the magical food made by monsters in Undertale is made of pure energy. That is why it instantly heals Frisk when they consume it. It doesn't need to be digested, so it has instantaneous effects. By contrast, regular food has no healing properties. If Frisk ate a normal hamburger, it would not heal them the way a monster burger would. This detail supports my belief that there is no magic in Deltarune's light world.
I mean, I guess that also points to the fact why you can have, I mean, granted, not canon, but that might also be why, Clover and Undertale Yellow, not Deltarune Yellow, Undertale, that can, eat gunpowder with no ill effects.
As light world food like the hot chocolate and box of chocolates have no healing properties and are even described as bulging in Chris's stomach, proving they have mass and are not pure energy. This stands in stark contrast to the food consumed in the dark world. These foods do have healing effects, just like Undertale's magic food, and given that Chris and Susie don't vomit up a bunch of mundane objects when they return to the light world, that suggests the dark world food they consume is completely absorbed by them as a form of energy.
I mean, given that we've seen Susie eats chalk, I don't really think she'd care if she actually did eat, other mundane objects.
I sincerely believe that this similarity between dark matter and Undertale magic is likely hinting at a greater truth regarding the nature of these two realities. However, that's a bit beyond the scope of this video, so let's reel it back in. For now, let us recap what my theory is so far. I believe dark fountains emit a magical darkness that warps reality and imbues objects with life. It then grants these objects new physical forms which are composed of dark matter. This dark matter is highly malleable and functions similarly to Undertale's magic. It can switch between matter and energy, it can be molded into weapons or food, and it composes the bodies of Darkners. With that established, we now know what Darkners are made of and some of the baseline attributes of that substance. However, there are still quite a few mysteries surrounding these entities, and from my point of view, there are 4 major questions that spring to mind. Those questions are as follows. 1. Why do dark fountains transform some objects into living Darkners while others remain inanimate? 2. Why are some Darkners far more powerful than others? 3. Why do Darkners have lengthy memories of their lives even though they were only created recently? And 4. Why are Darkners given the specific personalities that they end up with?
I mean, I've always speculated that it was that, like Darkner's memories and personalities and stuff like that was, all based off of, like, how they were used in life when they were just, an object. Because, I mean, of course, you have, Queen as an example, who was a laptop not just any laptop, a laptop used in a computer lab of a library, a public library. So obviously a lot of people have used her. That's the wrong choice of words, but you know what I'm talking about. So, like, depending on how the computer lab actually works, where if it's just an automatic thing where you just turn it on and use the laptop, or like maybe it's set up where whenever you have like a library card, you have your own account, thus everybody having their own personal like search histories, which Queen has. And then there's the whole thing about, once again, Queen seemingly only starting to go nuts when she lost internet connection, or actually thinking about it. The way Queen acts and the way we've seen her, maybe it's not the fact she went pure crazy. Maybe she was going stir crazy, because being a laptop, probably always being connected to the internet in some way, maybe she was always used to that sense of like interconnectedness with everything in the world, and then when she lost the internet connection and became a Darkner, and those things kind of connecting to say, "Oh, I'm all alone now," and she kind of went a little cuckoo and then when she became a Darkner, and those two things combined, she kind of went a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And then on the flip side of that, King, I mean, quite literally, the entire reason he does anything in Chapter 1 is because the Lightners abandoned him and everybody else in that classroom. So they obviously remember the fact that they just sat there locked in an abandoned classroom for God knows how many years. And then add in some Darkner magic to give them actual sentience, and oh my god, that it's like they left us, I'm going nuts, night comes in, all the other royalty puts King in charge, Chapter 1 happens.
These questions are all pretty tricky, but they ultimately brought me to an idea that not only provides an answer to these questions, but also ended up being integral to my theory. The idea I'm referring to is what I believe Toby Fox calls hopes and dreams. You should be familiar with this phrase, as not only was it a recurring theme in Undertale, Asriel's boss theme is even named after it, but it's also shown to us on screen when we first enter the Card Kingdom. This, I believe, is a sign as to the importance of this concept. You see, my theory holds that hopes and dreams are not just an abstract concept. Instead, they are literally a physical force that influences the Deltarune universe. If that concept sounds familiar, again, it should. Determination had a similar function in the first game, with it both representing the abstract concept of willpower and embodying a literal physical substance within the souls of both humans and monsters. I think Toby Fox has returned to his old bag of tricks with his implementation of hopes and dreams. To be clear, I'm not saying hopes and dreams have the same attributes as determination. I am simply suggesting they share the quality of being both a concept and a physical phenomena. That, of course, raises the question, what are the physical attributes of hopes and dreams? And how do they answer the questions I brought up earlier? Well, you see, it all ties back to souls. We know Lightners have souls, as demonstrated by Chris, but more importantly, I believe souls radiate a sort of energy that, when concentrated, can have a variety of supernatural effects. Specifically, when a Lightner concentrates their thoughts and feelings on a target, that target is imbued with this soul energy, and the more intense the Lightner's feelings are, the more energy is bestowed. This energy, which I believe Toby Fox refers to as hopes and dreams, is the force behind Darkners and the architect of their unique attributes. That may seem a bit complicated, but rest assured, it's pretty simple. Let's go through the question list and you'll see what I mean. First up is the question of why some objects come to life and become Darkners while others remain inanimate objects. My theory would hold that since some Darkners have absorbed more hopes and dreams than others, they are also granted more power, personality, and life. For example, Chris's pencil has only been interacted with by them, and since they haven't given it too much attention, it has only absorbed enough energy to become a sword. It's too weak to fully come to life. By contrast, the toys from the Card Kingdom and the programs from the Cyber City originate from a classroom and a computer lab respectively. This means they've been exposed to dozens of Lightners over the course of their existence, which has imbued them with enough power to fully come to life. Next up, let's talk about the question of power level. While most Darkners exist on a pretty equal playing field, some specific ones are clearly far more powerful than the others.
Yeah.
Some fans might dismiss this as merely being a consequence of the inherent hierarchy between objects. For example, the King is more powerful than Lancer because the King card ranks higher than a Jack, and the Queen is more powerful than Spamton because she's a full-blown computer while he's merely a program. However, where this
and like actually, I mean, depending on your interpretation, he might not even be a program. He might literally just be spam mail.
hierarchy explanation falls apart is when it comes to the likes of Jevil and the Neo robot. Sure, Jevil is a Joker card, which means he could potentially be better than even a king in some games, but depending on the game, he's just as likely to be useless or not included at all.
Yeah.
Also, why is Sham, a stuffed animal, more powerful than all of the card characters? Where's the hierarchy there? Are we supposed to believe that stuffed animals inherently rule over playing cards?
I mean, thinking about it, there was like a theory for Toy Story years ago that I remember hearing, and the fact that like how toys actually came to life was from the love of the kids playing with them. And I mean, I'll use my little brother as an example. Like his teddy bear he had when he was a little kid, he never let that go. In fact, it's still in his room somewhere. It's like he doesn't sleep with it anymore, but he keeps it on. He holds on to it for like, a keepsake. But I've also never seen him pick up a deck of cards before. So, just different amounts of usage.
That doesn't make much sense. And it makes even less sense when we look at the Neo robot, as this machine is implied to be nothing more than an art project that Swatch created with a single Lightner. If Swatch is below Queen, and Swatch made the Neo robot, shouldn't it be far weaker than either of them? And yet, the Neo robot is even more powerful than Giga Queen. As such, the hierarchy argument doesn't seem to hold water. By contrast, hopes and dreams provide a very easy solution. The Neo robot was described by Swatch as being extremely important to a specific Lightner. He even mentions that they poured their hopes and dreams into this project. And given what we know from Undertale, it seems incredibly likely that the Lightner was Mettaton, and that this robot represented the physical body that they always dreamed of having. That is a powerful freaking dream. Getting a proper body is a cornerstone of Mettaton's existence, and because Mettaton poured so much of himself into this dream, the Neo robot was absolutely filled with power. That is why it outmatches even the likes of Giga Queen. Nothing else in this dark world meant as much to anyone as the Neo robot meant to Mettaton. In short, hopes and dreams are the reason it ranks so much higher in terms of power. This theory could also explain Jevil and Sham's high power levels as well. While the Joker card may not always be useful, it is almost certainly the coolest card in the deck. Given that Jevil resided in a classroom for little kids, I could absolutely see them putting specific cards on a pedestal and giving them more attention than the others.
Yeah, I mean, if they were literal kids, yeah, I mean, hey, this one's really cool.
This likely explains Rules cards' increased power level as well, as everyone reads the rules. However,
I mean, I've never read the rules on a rules card of a deck of cards. Really, everything I know about playing cards is because, I was taught by another person while playing with them at the same time.
However, as much attention as the playing cards may have achieved, Sham was a full-blown stuffed animal, and thus would have received far more love and affection from the children than any mere playing card.
Oh god, yeah, definitely. Going back to my little brother's, old teddy bear, It's his nose is just you know how he has a snout and the nose at the end. His nose is but has what over like the many years he used them and played with him as a little kid. The nose was just completely worn off.
That, in turn, is why Sham was the only Darkner powerful enough to trap Jevil. This stuffed animal was simply given far more hopes and dreams than anyone else in the Card Kingdom. The next question on the list is with regards to Darkner memories, which I reckon can be further divided into two questions. Where do their memories of Lightners come from, and where do their memories of fellow Darkners come from?
Okay, well, I mean, the Lightner-related memories, again, just kind of goes to my whole thing where they just kind of remember how they were used as, you know, the objects, and then the Darkner powers just kind of extrapolate that into actual lives. I mean, maybe you could potentially say the same thing about, like, Darkner-related memories, where where the darkness sort of extrapolates just normal interactions of, like, these items into actual, like, personal interactions between people.
As for the former, it seems clear that Darkners remember their lives as inanimate objects. We see this from Spamton, who remembers Noel clicking on his spam emails, and from Swatch, who remembers working with Metaton to design the Neo robot. Presumably, this extends to all Darkners, with Sham remembering the children he played with, Queen remembering whoever owned her laptop, and so on. Now, that takes care of the Lightner memories, but what about the Darkner memories? Why do some Darkners have these memories of complex relationships while others have no connections at all? Some might argue that close proximity was an integral element, such as Sham and Jevil being from the same classroom. But that doesn't explain characters like Queen and King being connected, or Jevil and Spamton, or Jevil and Task Manager. Of course, you could argue that the objects that became these characters did cross paths at some point. Maybe whoever owned the laptop containing Queen, Spamton, and Task Manager also owned the playing cards containing King and Jevil.
Yeah. I mean, actually thinking about it again, the whole thing, because again, like, Queen has specifically said that Lancer is her son. So, I mean, like, unless the Dark Worlds have existed for a lot longer than we thought, or there's a lot of time compression going on, how does a playing card get with a laptop? there's some coupling going on there that I'm not really sure how it works.
That logic seems to hold up, but it doesn't explain why Lancer seems so unfamiliar with Queen. He refers to her as a wild mom, and King dismisses the idea of Queen and Lancer having a past connection. But if Lancer is from the same cards as King, why doesn't he remember any of the Cyberworld Darkners? Why do Task Manager and Spamton know Jevil, but no one else from the Cyber City does? Why aren't Jevil and Hacker friends? Or Lancer and Cap'n? Or Rules Card and Virokun? It all seems random who gets connections and who doesn't. This would make sense if Darkners existed in some sort of alternate reality prior to their dark fountains bringing them to Earth, but the evidence seems to deny that possibility. This Swatchling explicitly states that it was the dark fountain that created their world, showing that this place and these people did not exist prior to now, at least not in a sentient state. But again, if they only became sentient recently, how did they establish these complex relationships? This problem also ties into the question of where Darkner personalities come from. You might assume each Darkner's personality stems from the object that created them, and that's a fair assumption. Hathies are very kind and sweet, and they're made from heart cards. Rudens are obsessed with wealth, and they're made from diamond cards. Given the evidence, it seems safe to say that the object they're formed from definitely plays a role in defining a Darkner's personality.
Yeah, definitely.
However, what that doesn't explain are the variances between identical Darkners. For example, why are there so many different types of plug boy? Why does this one Bloxer want to be assembled differently? Why do some werewires become werewires while others do not? Their object likely plays a role in their identity, but with this level of variety, I don't think it's the only factor. The question of how Darkners acquire these relationships and personalities is a tricky one, but luckily my theory provides a solution. I said before that I think the souls of Lightners emit a form of energy called hopes and dreams. It's also been established in Undertale that souls are the source of everything a person is. As such, it stands to reason that this soul energy carries some of the essence of the person who created it. Therefore, when a Lightner imbues an object with energy, they are also imprinting that object with aspects of their own identity, including personality traits and memories. For example, Queen is heavily tied to Noelle, to the point that it is commonly believed that Queen is a stand-in for Noelle's mother. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, both Queen and the mayor are cold, calculating leaders who aren't particularly loved by their subjects, but are so good at their jobs that they stay in power.
Oh god, I just thought of such. So, Queen is described as a cold and calculating leader, but she's also just goofy as all hell. So of course there's a whole thing where she's a stand-in for her mother, but how much of a shock do you think it would be that if and when we actually do meet Mrs. Holiday, that she's exactly like Queen, where she is like seemingly very good at her job, but just also very goofy as well. Oh, I don't think I'd be mentally prepared for something like that.
They also both care about Noelle, yet are highly controlling of her life. The parallels are certainly there, but my theory argues that these parallels are not simply thematic. Instead, they actually exist for a reason. Noelle's relationship with her mother is a part of her identity, and I believe that part of herself was imprinted upon Queen. The same goes for everything else in the Dark World. Every Darkner has had their personalities, histories, and relationships molded by the Lightners they've encountered. And when you buy into this theory, suddenly every Darkner tells a story. Queen is so heavily influenced by Noelle that it either suggests Noelle spends an enormous amount of time in the computer lab, presumably researching what happened to her sister, or it suggests this laptop was once owned by the Holiday family, before perhaps being donated to the library. Then there's the king, who draws a great deal of parallels with Asgore. Asgore was also an authority figure in the town who has since fallen from grace, has a child who is regarded somewhat negatively by the community, and has a wife who left him. However, unlike Asgore, King is a great deal more malicious and cruel. This suggests that whoever owned the deck of cards was someone who had a great deal of disdain for the former chief of police. This hateful image of Asgore then got projected onto King. Similarly, they may have viewed Chris or Azrael as an annoying but fundamentally innocent individual and thus projected that idea onto Lancer. Given that these cards were found in Gerson's former classroom, and Gerson had a long history with Asgore in Undertale, it could be that Deltarune's Gerson had a much harsher view of Mr. Dreamer. Or it could be a completely different combination of Lightner influences that generated the King.
Yeah, because, who says it's just from one person? Because obviously, if one person uses an item a lot, they're going to, influence the Darkner a lot more. But again, all of these objects we've seen, and we'll have to see how, this changes in Chapter 3, given that, this is happening within Chris's house. But so far, in all the chapters we actually have out yet, all of the items were used in, at the very least, semi-public places, and were potentially used by a lot of people. So they could be being influenced by a lot of different sources.
But you see the point. By going with this theory, these personality traits and backstories and relationships that the Darkners have end up informing our understanding of the light world and the people in it. Needless to say, you can see why that aspect of my theory is really appealing, as it adds a great deal of depth to the setting. Any aspect of a person's soul could end up leaving its mark on a Darkner, and with each Darkner potentially being exposed to the essence of dozens of Lightners, that mishmash of energy culminates in the unique entities that we encounter in the Dark World.
Yeah,
this also answers all our questions quite handily. Why do some objects not become sentient? Because they didn't receive enough soul energy.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, going back to the whole like the chess and checkerboard and the chess and checker pieces. I mean, when it comes to playing a game of either chess or checkers, which do you play? Which do you pay more attention to, the pieces or the board? The board is just there, and to let you know where to put the pieces. You're focused on the pieces themselves. So, yeah, okay.
Why are some Darkners far more powerful than others? Because they received far more soul energy. And why do Darkners have these unique personalities and complex relationships despite being born today? Because their identities and histories were molded by the hopes and dreams of the Lightners they encountered. Even the phrase hopes and dreams has great versatility. While seemingly a purely positive phrase, it's actually quite capable of being a negative force. You can hope and dream for horrible, violent, or negative things to happen in the world, and those feelings can be very powerful.
Yeah.
This also potentially allows for there to be a unique pair of antagonists within Deltarune's narrative. Namely, there could be a Lightner antagonist who is fuming with negative emotions, and a Darkner antagonist who has been fueled by those negative feelings. Whether that dual antagonist plot will actually happen, I don't know, but it's another cool possibility enabled by this theory.
I mean, given that, all the connections that the Knight has to Gaster, I mean, you could very much... I mean, if the Knight isn't just Gaster themselves, I could see a connection where you have, like, multiple antagonists to this. And again, with the whole, dual world, one of each, it works.
Now that we've established the concept of hopes and dreams, we can tie it back to the idea of dark matter. To summarize, the overall theory thus far is as follows. A Lightner imbues power in an object through prolonged exposure to said object. This power is known as hopes and dreams and carries the essence of that Lightner's soul, including their personalities, relationships, and memories. When that object is then exposed to a dark fountain, it is granted a new form made out of dark matter. If there's only a small amount of soul energy in that object, it doesn't come to life, and instead becomes an inanimate object such as a building, a CD bagel, or a tree, just to give a few examples. On the other hand, if there is a decent amount of soul energy imbued in that object, it can become a fully living entity known as a Darkner. These Darkners have their identities molded by the object that created them and by the hopes and dreams imbued within said object. If the soul power they were imbued with was formed from particularly potent hopes and dreams, then that Darkner will become incredibly powerful. And honestly, that's enough theory crafting to constitute a whole video on its own.
Yeah,
but
it definitely
believe it or
is.
not, this dark matter theory still has a fair bit more to cover. You see, we now need to use the ideas we've established to explain why the Lightners change form when they enter the dark world. And this is where things get very, very interesting. So, what are the facts of this mystery? Well, for starters, we know that upon entering the dark world, Lightners change color and change outfit. The outfit part is pretty easy to explain. Just as a pencil can become a sword, a shirt can become a chestplate. Simple enough.
Makes sense.
And when it comes to Noelle, Susie, and Berdly, while their colors do change slightly, they are still fairly close to their light world counterparts. As such, you could dismiss this as being a lighting change or something else insignificant. However, where that logic fails is with Chris. There is no obvious reason for the yellow of Chris's skin or the brown of their hair to become blue. The yellow of Berdly's beak doesn't become blue, nor does Noelle's brown fur.
I mean, okay, so I was going to say, the darkness and how, shadows affect stuff like that. Like, I was going to say, maybe, maybe if you look, maybe a yellow is like the opposite of the color wheel from blue, and like the darkness is like causing some sort of reflection. Actually, wait a second. I should probably look that up. Let me look at a color wheel. Yeah, never mind. That doesn't really work. I mean, for that to work, you'd have to have Chris turn purple. But no, he turns more, again, he turns like a light blue. There goes that theory, unfortunately.
Since they've decided to make this major deviation for Chris, that suggests the Dark World is altering them somehow.
I also only just noticed that Birdley's eyes turn green. Again, like I'm learning all sorts of things this video.
And if it's altering Chris, then it is likely altering the other Lighteners as well. In fact, we know that Lighteners in the Dark World are physically quite different from how they are in the Light World. For one, Susie, Noelle, and Birdley use magic while in the Dark World, despite the fact that they never demonstrate such abilities while in the Light World. And even if you think monsters can use magic in the Light World, despite the fact that none of them have demonstrated that ability yet, there's still the matter of their stats. In the Light World, Chris has a measly 20 HP, while in the Dark World, they have a great deal more. Their other stats are also quite different. Furthermore, given that the Light World is modeled after Undertale, it is not unreasonable to assume that being brought to 0 HP in the Light World would result in Chris's death, just like what happens to Frisk when they are dropped to 0 HP. By contrast, in the Dark World, being brought to 0 HP is no big deal. You can even get knocked into negative levels of health and still pop right back up with no ill effects.
Yeah, well, the only thing that, affects it is if everybody else also goes to 0 or under.
Furthermore, you don't officially get a game over with Chris's soul shattering until every single member of your party is wiped out, which is a mechanic that has yet to receive a lore explanation. This is quite puzzling. Why are we immortal so long as one of our party members is still standing? What power is keeping our soul from shattering? These questions and more surround the physical properties of Lighteners, but luckily, Dark Matter can provide some answers. Now, we've established that bringing objects into the Dark World causes them to be given a new form composed of Dark Matter. However, what we've yet to establish is what happens to the regular matter that normally makes up that object. I mentioned it may be possible that Darkners have their objects at the core of their being, similar to how monsters have souls at their core, but even if that's true, we still don't know what that object is made of. For example, when Lancer transforms into a playing card in order to fit in Chris's pocket, do you think this card is made of regular matter or dark matter? At first glance, it seems like a mundane playing card, but when we look in our inventory, we see that Rule's card and Lancer are fully formed Darkners, still capable of speaking and moving. Lancer even turns to stone in the Snowgrave route, proving that this really is Lancer's current form despite being shrunk down. And if Lancer and Rule's card were really made of regular matter while transformed into playing cards, then this behavior should not be possible. Unlike dark matter, which is malleable and can do almost anything, regular matter is static and inanimate. If reverting into a playing card really was Lancer reverting into his normal object form, then he should behave like a normal object. But he doesn't. He's just a miniature Lancer. That suggests to me that regardless of whether this object is Lancer's soul or not, it must still be composed of dark matter. There's no other explanation for Lancer retaining his Darkner properties while in this state. This brings us to an important conclusion. Matter, upon entering the Dark World, is completely replaced with dark matter. And if you need more evidence, then look no further than Dark World food. As we established earlier, Dark World food must be completely absorbed as energy when consumed, as otherwise it would leave mundane objects in Chris's stomach.
Yeah, there definitely is something. I mean, like, God, I mean, again, scary idea, but the idea that, all their matter is replaced with quote-unquote dark matter. I mean, God, what does, in, like, Chapter 2, what do Chris's and Susie's transformation look like when they jump into the Dark World? Yeah, I could definitely see that, because it's almost like, oh, they're going into the Dark World feet first, so that, like, the replacement of matter starts from the bottom and works its way up.
And if within every piece of Dark World food was a scratch and sniff sticker or a piece of chalk or some other random garbage, then Chris would absolutely get sick upon consuming them. But they don't, which proves that these objects have been completely absorbed. And if the food has been completely absorbed, that can only mean that it was entirely composed of dark matter. This is a pretty major discovery, as it completely changes how we're meant to see the Dark World versions of Chris and their friends. For one, when we see Chris and Susie undergo this transformation, it's not just a fun visual effect. This is the game
Quite
telling
literally.
us that their bodies have been completely transformed. Before, they were composed of regular matter, but now they're composed of dark matter. And as you likely expect, this provides answers to all the questions I just brought up. Why is their skin tone different? Because it's made of a completely different substance. Why are their stats different? Because dark matter is enhanced by the power of souls. And since Chris and friends have souls, that means the physical attributes of their bodies are now directly linked to the power of their souls. In fact, this theory completely explains why Chris and Susie level up between chapters, and why Noelle levels up in the middle of chapter 2. It's because their levels aren't tied to violence or experience points like they were in Undertale, but are instead fueled by their hopes and dreams. And while it's true that every Lightner experiences the Dark World differently, it's undeniable that each and every one of them grows and develops as people. They gain new friends, new memories, new emotions, and whole new worlds to inspire them. If that doesn't empower your hopes and dreams, then I don't know what will. This also provides a potential explanation for why Chris and their friends can survive dropping below 0 HP. You see, since their bodies are made of malleable dark matter instead of regular matter, that means their new bodies don't have to follow their typical physiological rules. We see this is the case in the way Chris and Susie can fall tremendous heights without suffering harm.
Yeah,
if their
they just
bodies
fall
still
in,
had
yeah.
normal light world bones, then they would instantly shatter upon entering the dark world. But they don't, so clearly their bodies don't follow the usual rules. As such, it would make sense if a dark matter body can be severely damaged without destroying the Lightner's soul. In fact, if you've ever tried to do a violent playthrough, you'll know it's borderline impossible to kill anything in the Dark World, which further supports the notion that physical bodies composed of dark matter, whether they're Darkner or Lightner, simply aren't as fragile as light world bodies. As for why all your party members need to drop to 0 HP before you get a game over,
Hopes
I
and
believe
dreams.
this is tied to the way dark matter is empowered by hopes and dreams. Specifically, I think that every party member is directly enhancing each other with their souls. This is explicitly showcased to be a mechanic in the final boss fight of each chapter, as we
Shine
see
your power
Chris
on
use their
Rousey.
soul to empower their allies' abilities. And while you can't use this mechanic all the time, I would argue that a weaker version of this effect is always present, which is what passively keeps your party members alive even if they're knocked below 0 HP. This idea of their souls empowering each other and being in contact with one another is further supported by the game over screens. On this screen, even if
not
all
your
your party
fate.
members are dead, you can still hear Rousey or Susie talking to Chris and encouraging them to not give up. This only makes sense if they're talking to each other with their souls, as when you're below 0 HP, you're effectively unconscious, and Rousey in particular completely vanishes from the battlefield. If his
Yeah.
body has completely vanished, then the only way he could be talking to us in the game over screen is if he's speaking with his soul. Also, if you're wondering why this empowerment mechanic only visibly shows up during the final boss fights, I would argue it's all about location. You see, every time you enhance an ally like this, it's when you're standing in front of a dark fountain. We still don't know the exact properties of these dark fountains,
being
but given that
empowered
it
by them.
enhances the power of Chris's soul to the point that they can even buff allies, I think we can reach a pretty notable conclusion. Namely, that dark fountains are either partially or entirely composed of hopes and dreams. However, before I dive into the dark fountain rabbit hole, let's first finish discussing the lighteners.
I mean, if they were made out of hopes and dreams, I mean, given that everything we've seen about, the Dark Worlds give lighteners a form of escapism, I mean, what other escapism does the average person have in their day-to-day lives than just their hopes, their imaginations, their dreams? Yeah, so think of it. Yeah, I could definitely see that that being how that works.
I've covered almost everything, but there's still one last question that we can answer using dark matter theory. Why does Chris completely change color scheme upon entering the dark world? The answer, as you may have guessed, is tied to their soul. You see, dark matter is molded by the energy emitted by souls, and since lighteners gain dark matter bodies while within the dark world, that means those bodies are altered by the energy emitted by their individual souls. In fact, I would argue that the lighteners are subconsciously molding their dark world bodies to resemble how they normally look in the light world. But because this is a subconscious process, elements of their own self-image cause these new bodies to have subtle differences. Case in point, Susie and Birdley have larger-than-life personalities, and so their dark world bodies are more vibrant and distinct. By contrast, Noelle is absolutely choked by her own self-doubt, which causes her dark world body to appear paler and less distinct. It's a simple enough idea, but where things get complicated is with Chris. You see, they don't look anything like their regular self, so the subconscious explanation doesn't apply. This leaves us with the same question that we started with. Why is Chris blue? Well, I believe the answer is really quite simple. Unlike Susie, Birdley, and Noelle, Chris does not have a regular soul. This is not a new fact. Chris's soul, as you may recall, is being possessed. There is some other entity inside of this heart, meaning the energy emitted by this soul isn't just Chris's energy. It's a mixture of Chris and this mysterious entity. Whoever this is, whoever is hijacking this soul is either unintentionally or intentionally interfering with the subconscious process that forms Chris's dark world body.
Okay, actually thinking about it. So I mean, let's continue this little thought experiment here, where like the dark world, when you go into the dark world, like your body actually changes based on your subconscious and stuff like that. What do you think would happen if you had somebody go into a dark world with body dysmorphia, like some actual body, like some serious body dysmorphia? Like, I mean, for example, if you sent Deltarune's Mettaton into a dark world, I'd assume that, right now they're just a ghost. Would they literally just be a palette swap ghost with some fancy gear? Or would they actually turn into, like, Mettaton like how we saw them in Undertale? Or, alternatively, if you saw someone and they were like trans, if they were if they were biologically a guy and they wanted to be a girl, do you think they'd actually turn into a girl in the dark world and vice versa? Yeah, geez, there's some really good fanfiction possibilities there, and I want somebody to write something about it.
This, in turn, causes their color palette to shift dramatically. Of course, the identity of this entity is up for debate.
It's us!
And why they make Chris turn blue is similarly debatable. But since my opinions on this topic aren't exactly popular, I'll let you guys debate that topic in the comments below. And with that, I reckon it's time to wrap this theory up. Or is it?
Oh, come on.
You see, while I have covered a great deal in this theory, there are still quite a few questions left unanswered. For example, where does dark matter come from? Where do dark fountains come from? What is their true nature? Why can they bring objects to life?
Where does dark matter come from? Well, when a mommy matter and a daddy matter love each other very much.
is the source of this incredible power? Why do you stab the ground to access it? Needless to say, there's still a fair bit more for me to provide answers for, and rest assured, I do have answers for these questions. However, this video is long enough as is, so I'll be saving the rest of this theory for next time. Make sure to subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on the stunning conclusion of the dark matter theory. And I am not exaggerating when I say the next part of this theory will completely change how you view the world of Deltarune. Before we head out, I'd like to give a huge...
Very, very interesting. So I've watched a lot of Deltarune related theories, and some of them are sort of iffy. Some of them are really good. Jaru consistently makes really good theories that I can't help but think about. If this wasn't technically the end, with, you know, more theories afterwards, because I think I saw on like a community post on their channel, they said that for the next little while they're actually going to be posting like weekly videos, which, I mean, you know, dude, don't burn yourself out. I like your content. I don't want to miss you for like another 6 months because you're tired. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what the next video of this is, because honestly, the whole idea that, again, like the weird consistencies between real life dark matter and this hypothetical like dark matter and Deltarune are actually really cool. I want to and I hope to see that, you know, they actually do something more with that. That'd be really cool. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So, yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video linked to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.